Our next speaker is actually going to come and talk about strategy, strengthening strategy, looking ahead, strengthening strategic relationships in existing regional networks by Clifford Omondi Okwani. He's a research fellow at the Department of Political Affairs at the Public Administration at the University of Nairobi. So let's put our hands together. Let's invite Clifford. Aye, Mumekula. Let us clap for Clifford. Yeah, that's more like it.
When I was invited to come and talk about strategy, I was so excited. Security is what I read, security is what I eat, security is what I sleep. So it's very interesting. And listening to Professor here speaking, he's been my mentor for a long time. And I happen to be also very privileged to bring some of my students here, so it's a generation. So I'm very happy today. I'm going to talk about strategy. I'm going to talk about strengthening strategy regional network, and my focus will be so much on AMISOM. The presentation is divided into, it's very deeply rooted into strategic studies, international relations. For those of you who've studied international relations and political science, deeply rooted into different theoretical understanding of counter-violence extremism and counter-terrorism. So I'll try as much as possible to be very simple. So to start us with, just an understanding of what security is. Security and strategy. These are very interesting concepts. And I've been working with this concept for such a long time. Security today has changed. The way we used to look at security is very different from today's security. Before, old wars, it was about the battlefield. Today, the battlefield has changed. It's on the internet. We have things to do with cybersecurity. It's not just about physical security, but psychological aspect. The physical versus the psychological balance. For example, the Ethiopian Defense Forces, they're fighting in Somalia. All of a sudden, there's war in Tigray region, northern Ethiopia. So that balance between, you're fighting on the ground, but at home, there is some tension, so some feelings about what's going on at home. So wars have changed. We used to have old wars, today we have new wars. And how do we have strategies to fight these new wars? We have the internet. A lot of young people are on the internet as compared to people of my age. We are not so much on the internet. And so there's a lot of strategies which we need to use in terms of understanding the new wars, understanding how we can counter violence extremism. Security, on the other side, just to be very clear, it's the absence of threat. When we talk of the absence of threat, we are talking about state security, foreign policy. The state provides security for us. Today we are happy here, enjoying, because the government is protecting us. But we cannot just define security as absence of threat. Because today, as I say, the world is changing. So security can also be defined as absence of fear. Take this example. You are a Somali kid. Maybe you're in school somewhere in Lower Shabelle. You're in school somewhere in Baidoa. Even Kismayo, for example, where there's Kenya Defense Forces. You are going to school, but when you come home, Al-Shabaab are around. You hear some of the neighbor there, maybe somewhere there. You're in a community where Al-Shabaab exists. So, do you take security as absence of threat or absence of fear? Because you see the AMISOM military around your home, but also Al-Shabaab is trying to tell you not to support this security. So it's not just about state security, it's also absence of fear. When there is that absence of fear, then security can emerge. And actually this Al-Shabaab, for example, they use this aspect of absence of fear in some of their tactics and strategy. And therefore, governments such as Kenya, Ethiopia, within AMISOM, that is Burundi, Uganda, they should come up with strategies which are much, much more ahead. And this should be clear in some of my next slides when we talk of these strategies. So let me just give a very brief, because I don't want to dwell on the theoretical framework. The theory I'm trying to use here to define, for example, what Rehema was talking about, radicalization, is a theory called ontological security. I'll explain briefly what I mean. Ontological security is the security of the self. You know, if you're an international relations student, you will understand that there are these big theories such as realism, power and might and national security and so on. But different theories have emerged. For example, when you study radicalization, a theory such as ontological security is very important to understand foreign policy. How these states such as Kenya, Ethiopia, behave within AMISOM is very important. We have this East Africa Standing Forces that is the AMISOM police, and how these police behave within AMISOM. Currently, if you look at AMISOM is very much focused on the military. They have few number of police, about very few, 70 civilians. So it's very much focused on the military, which a theory like this, realism, is focusing on. It's about the state. It's about self-help. It's about survival. Kenya went into Somalia in 2011 to protect itself, claiming Article 51 of the UN Charter, self-defense. And it's about survival. At the international level, everyone has to help themselves. There's no world police. So you have to help yourself. You have to survive within the international arena. But some of these strategies projected by realism, we have seen when we look at violence extremism, they are not very much productive. So, realism talks about power. It's all about power. It's all about survival. It's all about. But we have new sort of realism thinking, which is structure. So if you think of structure, you think of AMISOM, for example. The Horn of African countries have been coming in as a body within AMISOM to fight the Al-Shabaab, counter-violence extremism. So different, realism has changed when it comes to when we think of the structure. So structural realism. But within the structure, you find that states are also fighting. For example, there's a lot of politics between Kenya and Ethiopia. And for those of you who've studied, who are very much keen in the Horn of Africa studies, studying security within the Horn, you find that, for example, in 1964, the Ethiopian-Kenyan pact, fighting, coming up within a military strategy to fight Somalia, and then the Moi and Ethiopia, also in the 90s, where Cold War was very much projected. Actually, Cold War was coming to an end, and then Kenya and Ethiopia also had some kind of politics. So you find that as much as these countries within the Horn are fighting within Somalia, there's some kind of history which can explain how these states behave. And structural realism can explain to us how these alliances come and how these alliances have challenges. Next, when we try to understand ontological security, as I've said, realism is about physical security, foreign policy. It's about state survival. It's about power and money. But today, as we say, security has changed, and we shall see this. For example, if you compare the current violence, extremism in Mozambique, that is Cabo Delgado, and you compare that with the Kenyan situation. A very good example is the Pumwani case, how Al-Shabaab, recruited in Pumwani, and how Al-Shabaab also does the same in Nkole village in Mozambique. Very similar. Ontological security teaches us about identities. It gives us a framework of anxieties. The individual reflects on themselves. What is my identity, for example? And so on. So this gives us a more better understanding and understanding of security from an individual level, as opposed to the military aspect. Next, some of the strategies, understanding AMISOM. AMISOM, way back from 2006, different strategies, US-Ethiopian alliance, and then AMISOM coming in. Today, AMISOM have different sectors within Somalia. They have about 6 sectors in Somalia. But these sectors within Somalia, if we could ask ourselves, because AMISOM from 2014, the UN Security Council have been saying, AMISOM will withdraw, AMISOM will withdraw. Last year, AMISOM was supposed to withdraw sometimes in May. Today, the UN Security Council has said AMISOM will withdraw in December. Will they really withdraw? If they withdraw, what will happen? And one question we should ask ourselves, for example, the Burundi troops, they are in Somalia. The Rwandese troops, they are in Mozambique. If we ask ourselves what Rwandese troops are doing in Cabo Delgado, a lot of issues, for example, Burundi, we would say maybe trying to help their youth, because young people are involved in these military actions, and AMISOM, actually SADC, that is the South African coalition, they can learn something from AMISOM. AMISOM is very, very military based. AMISOM has about, some people say 19,000 troops, some 18,000 troops by 2019. AMISOM has it should have about 1,000 police. And the civilians about 70. So you look at AMISOM itself, very, very much military based. But if you, for example, compare AMISOM and ECOMOG, ECOMOG did something very interesting. ECOMOG helped to remove Yahya Jammeh in power. So this strategy of coalitions can help a state. But again, we should ask ourselves a lot of questions when it comes to military forces, because security is changing. Security has changed. So one thing we should understand is the dilemma between foreign policy and domestic policy. you know. There's this issue of territoriality. When I talk of territoriality, I mean there are bases which the government is so strong. And these violent extremist organizations, such as Al-Shabaab, you know, they cannot reach. I mean, it's very hard for them to reach there. But there are also other territories which I call semi-territoriality. These are bases which there is a strength, your government is very strong, but these organizations have some relatively freedom to move. Such kind of semi-territoriality would be Mandera, for example, would be Wajir, for example, would be Garissa, for example, and so on. Of course, there's strong government, but these organizations have some freedom to operate. So such policies focusing on such semi-territoriality aspect is very important. Another thing when it comes to strategy, you know, civil society plays a lot of important role when it comes to counter-violence extremism, because civil societies are on the ground. They are, you know, they rub shoulders with the community. So they have initiatives such as community policing, which is a very good strategy when it comes to countering violence extremism. And community policing is a strategy as well as a philosophy. A philosophy in the sense that you're building trust within the security forces and the community to fight counter-violence extremism. But it is a strategy also for the security forces to get information. So such kind of strategies are very important. And for example, in Kenya, the civil society are playing a very important role. So, for example, there's a coalition between the civil society and government and the police, that is, when it comes to community policing. These are very important initiatives when it comes to fighting violent extremism. This is a very important framework. I happen to be privileged in training East Africa Standing Forces Police in Embakasi. I was involved in training different police when it comes to community policing. Community policing is a very good strategy when it comes to partnership, solving problems, because the community, the police becomes more, you know, the police works with the community as opposed to, you know, policing the community. These are very good strategies when it comes to fighting counter-violence extremism. But these East Africa Standing Forces, they have a lot of challenges. You know, when you try to study these organizations, you find that even within the state themselves, you know, the police and the community. I happened to do a very good study in Kenya, studying community policing, interviewing young people, asking them different Sheng languages, what are the Sheng languages for the police. And some of these Sheng languages are very interesting because police is something bad. So we need to have such strategies in order to attract the youth to work with the police. If you understand how the community view the police in Kenya, then you will understand that we have some problem. I'm just finishing. Now, some of the challenges. Of course, I mentioned foreign policy problem. Physical security. AMISOM is very much military based. We need to focus a bit on maybe ontological security, the anxieties. You know, we look at the self, understanding the self. These are different strategies which states can apply when it comes to defense. Not just military and the physical aspect, not just power and money. It's not just power and money, but it's also about the feelings, the psychoanalysis, trying to understand the aspect of security. You know, the concept radicalization, for example, is very contested in different aspects. You know, I think some days back, there was an attack in Somalia, that is in Mogadishu, suicide attack. I don't know so far how many people have died, 11 or maybe more. And this tells you the kind of, the strength these organizations still have. Yet AMISOM is saying we're supposed to withdraw in December, and so on. And again, as I said, historical challenges, Daniel Toroitich Arap Moi, for example, looking towards the United States, and Hel Mariam of Ethiopia looking towards the Soviet Union. That is during the Cold War period. So you find that within the Horn of Africa, there's a lot of, there's a lot of anxieties. The individual state goes out there. There's a lot of, the international arena is very, there's no world police. So you have to calculate. Should I work with Daktari here? Should I work with Professor here? So all these are issues within the international arena. And therefore, the organizations such as Al-Shabaab takes advantage. And this is if you study Al-Shabaab in how Al-Shabaab recruited in Pumwani, with this leader, young, energetic, young, energetic leadership within the mosque, they come and challenge the old mosque in Pumwani. Ahmed Iman is saying that these old people, the leadership within the mosque, we should be more radical. And this is the same thing and the same situation which happened in Mozambique. A young man by the name Swaleh, he comes from he comes from Tanzania, Mbeya, goes into Nkole village, and he radicalized the young people, saying that the old leadership of the mosque is not, they're not according to the ideologies. So then people start adjusting. I happen to be privileged to be in Kole village, trying to understand violence, extremism, but you find that Al-Shabaab present in Mozambique, it's, people talk, it's very blurry because people are writing about Al-Shabaab in Mozambique. There's also ISIS in Mozambique. So there's a lot of, it's still an area which needs to be understood. But you find that there's a lot of militarization already. The Rwandese police are there, with the help, they're helping the Mozambique. South African is also, South Africa and Mozambique coalition and so on. So you find that this military strategy, as much as it might be good, it might be helpful, but we might be having a lot of challenges. So thank you so much. Asante sana.
Thank you very much.
Let's give him one more round of applause. I think, considering the depth of what he had to present, there's a lot we can actually learn from what he has presented to us this afternoon. Hopefully, we can have the same shared with every single one of us. There's a lot of knowledge and information that we can pick up from there. Now, we'd like to officially launch season 5 of the Lego Guide in Atalanta. I know that is exactly what brought us here today. So let's put our hands together for Honorable Jennifer Shamala as she comes up to the stage to officially launch the Lego Guide in Atalanta.
Are you a filmmaker, a poet, or a musician under the age of 35 residing in the Horn of Africa? This is your opportunity to help spearhead for a safer region free of terrorism and violent extremism using your creative skills. Due to public demand, Lenga Ugaidi in Atalanta is now regional. We are in Kenya, Uganda, Ethiopia, Djibouti, and Somalia. Create your original 5-minute film, poem, or song and submit it for a chance to win cash prizes worth over 20,000 US dollars. Will you rise to the top and be at the forefront? Then what are you waiting for? For more information on how to participate, visit our website at www.lengoguide.co.ke or follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Terms and conditions apply.